The world champion Ding Liren is back to the board and he is playing a rapid tournament in China with his fellow countrymen. Yesterday's game he managed to win a nice endgame against Bai Jinchi, and now in this video we are going to have a look at a game played in the semi-final. It's a knockout tournament and Ding Liren is playing against Wang Hao. So the first game ended in a draw, and in the second game Wang Hao is playing with the white pieces against Ding Liren, and we all are curious to see if Ding is really able to get back to his level when he managed to become a world champion. After a break of 9 months, it's not easy, it's not a very serious tournament, it's a warming up tournament as Ding is about to travel to play his first classical tournament in 9 months in the Netherlands, the Wijk aan Zee Tata Steel Masters tournament. But okay, first, this game. He's playing with black against Wang Hao, and we get to see a very interesting game. Wang Hao goes for e4, and it's an Italian opening. Both sides are developing their pieces. This is all pretty standard, so we go through the moves pretty quickly now. And the first interesting moment appears on move 9, as you do see the tension between the two bishops. Who is going to take? Well, Wang Hao says, I want to keep the bishop on the board. I put the bishop on b5 because you have played a move a5. The bishop is doing pretty well on the b5 square. But now Ding Liren is a very strong theoretician, especially in this line. In 1e4, e5 opening stage, he knows really a lot. He's a specialist. And now he played here this move, queen b8. It's a very modern way of playing the Italian opening. The idea is to activate the queen by placing it on a7, so that together with the bishop you're about to exert pressure on this diagonal. This doesn't come as a surprise to Wang Hao, as he is blitzing out his first 26 moves. He takes the knight on c6. Black does recapture, and now the pawn goes to d4, attacking the bishop, attacking the pawn on e5 as well. So black is taking the pawn, white does recapture, renewing the threat against the bishop goes back, and now interesting move, the move a4 is played. So the idea is to fix the pawn. Well, you're not really going to attack the pawn anytime soon, but the idea will be revealed in a couple of moves, as the rook is going to be developed along the third rank. Queen a7, so the queen is there to hit the pawn on d4. The knight goes to f1 to protect the pawn on d4 one more time, so the pawn is sufficiently defended. But now black strikes in the center with the move d5, attacking the pawn on e4 together with the pawn and the knight, forcing white to make a decision. The idea is that if white advances, you can install your knight on e4, and that gives some stability to the black position. So this was not played, and Wang Hao instead played here this move, knight to g3. So black is allowed to take here. Pawn takes, knight takes, rook takes. So the rook joins the action as well, and we have an unusual position. Black has the bishop pair, but its double pawns on the c-file, they're quite vulnerable, and white is very active. Now, rooks are connected for black, so how are you going to place the rooks? You would maybe expect rook e8 or rook d8. Well, rook a e8 was played by Ding in this game, so he is clearly hinting at a possible exchange of rooks. But here, rook a3 is played, and the rook is looking for a way to get employed along the third rank, hoping to join the action on the king side at some point. Bishop goes to d5, so the rook is under an attack. And what is white going to do? Is white going to accept the exchange of rooks? Well, look what Wang Hao is doing. He goes for the move rook to g4. Very aggressive move, setting up the huge threat of taking the pawn on h6, because with the rook on g4 you're pinning the pawn on g7. And how is black going to cope with that threat? Various possibilities. There's an aggressive move of chasing the rook away with the move f5. If the rook goes away later, maybe a knight can come to that square. So it's a very risky, positionally speaking, move. But instead, Ding wants to play it in a more solid way. Goes for rook e4, offering the exchange of rooks again. And now we get to see Wang Hao, his idea, as he drops back with the rook to g3. So the threat of bishop takes pawn is still alive. How is black going to anticipate this threat? Well, there are various possibilities. One logical move here would be just to move the king to h8. Perhaps even h7 is a possibility. You can also drop back with the rook to e6 to protect the pawn on h6. It's an unclear position. It's a relatively quiet middle game, but tactics will come very soon. Probably white is definitely looking for attacking ideas. And as I said, Wang Hao was still blitzing out all his moves. So very likely he is still in his home preparation. And that also shows that he was familiar with this move. Bishop takes d4, which was played. Black is taking that important pawn in the center, but neglecting the pawn on h6. You cannot take right now on h6 because it runs into bishop takes f2. With check, you're hitting both the king and the rook, so that's not good. First, therefore, white should take the bishop with a knight. Queen takes, rook takes, and now it's bishop takes h6. White wins back that pawn on h6, making use of that pin along the g-file. Bishop cannot be captured. If you advance the pawn, then the rook on f8 will be taken. So here, definitely black is having a problem. And I think actually that Ding consciously decided to enter this line. What he missed, I'm not entirely sure. He decided to move the king away to attack the bishop on h6. But now the bishop captures another pawn and hits both rooks. Black is absolutely forced now to give a check on d1. And then after king h2, there is this move rook e8. And we get to see the idea of black's play here, because the rook is on its way to e1. Well, first it's white's turn, and white comes up with a very important move. Played here the move rook to g5. That's an excellent idea. You keep the bishop defended. And well, for instance, if black decides here to place the rook on the second rank, going after the pawns on the second rank, then it's rook a to g3. Now that you see the other rook is joining the attack, and with the rook on g3, that rook overprotects the bishop. So white is planning to go rook h5, and if the king goes to g8, it's rook h8 with checkmate. So that's white's idea, to get the other rook involved. Therefore, rook e to e1 is played, and now, of course, rook a to g3. It's not good, because after rook h1, it's checkmate. The white king can't escape. So in this case, you got to be careful. You cannot place your rook on g3. You need to keep that square available for your own king. But you can play here the move bishop f6. So now the bishop is safe and the rook is free to move again. And if we do look at the position, we see that white is actually a pawn up. Even black's doubled pawns on the c-file, they're not looking great. You just have to be a little bit careful. But black doesn't have enough resources here. For instance, if you do give a check and you go after the king and then attack the pawn on g2 one more time, then white is just going to play the move f3, and this bishop on d5 remains out of play. White is absolutely in control in that case. So rook h1 was not played. King h6 is on the board, staying in touch with the rook, even though the rook cannot be captured. It's defended by the bishop. But after rook to g4, there are still mating ideas. At the right moment, definitely white will still try to find mating constructions with the two rooks and a bishop, because the king doesn't have any support. So it's still quite a sharp endgame. King h5 played. Not really sure it was needed to play this move, but yeah, okay, it's a possibility, of course. So here. Now, interesting moment, because I can imagine that you would feel uncomfortable as white facing the potential pressure on this back rank. So Wang Hao makes a very human decision here by offering the exchange of rooks, playing the move rook to e3. It's not really a bad move, but probably it's just better to go back with the rook to c3, so that you're planning to stay on c2, keep your second rank covered. Maybe you play the move f3, and you're about to consolidate your position, and white should be technically winning. But okay, rooks are coming off the board, slightly weakening the pawn structure. That's why I don't like the move rook e3. This pawn on e3 is isolated now. And with a move like rook e1, you can make it harder for white to convert its advantage. You attack this pawn, you can always place the rook on the second rank, hitting other pawns as well. White is probably winning, but it's not easy at all. Look what happened in the game, because Ding played here the move rook d2 immediately, but that gives white the possibility to advance the pawn to e4. That's a very important move, as you do attack the bishop, and black is no longer able to exert pressure on that pawn on g2. Bishop goes back to e6, attacking the rook. Rook goes to g5, and the king goes back to h6, but that also enables white to just capture the pawn on a5, and that gives new winning ideas, because you do have an outside passed pawn, and it will be very difficult for black to stop that pawn. Maybe rook e2 should be played still to attack the pawn. If the pawn advances, then the diagonal for the bishop is closed, and black can simply take that pawn on b2. I think that is what should have been tried. Instead, king g6 is played, attacking the bishop with a king, but the bishop goes back to c3. With tempo, you're hitting the rook, but the bishop is excellently placed also to support the march of white's outside passed a pawn. Rook e2. So the rook is going after the pawn on e4, but white is very fast now. Rook c5, not minding that pawn, because after rook takes e4, you do play this move a5. The pawn is coming really fast. If you get behind that pawn, so the pawn is no longer able to run, well, then you can simply take the pawn on c6, and white is again 2 pawns up, likely to win the pawn on c7 as well. So therefore no time to put the rook on a4 at this point. First bishop d5 was played, but now the pawn is really fast and only 2 squares away from getting promoted. Now getting behind the passed pawn is simply coming too late, because White's pawn cannot be defended, but you can interfere on the a file by placing the bishop on a5, and then not the rook nor the bishop, they are both unable to stop the pawn. The rook is fantastically placed, protecting the bishop and preventing the c pawn from coming forward. Well, after the move a6, black was looking for counterplay with the move rook e2, threatening to take the pawn on g2, but white says, well, I don't want to be stuck with my king in the corner. Let's just run away into the field. That's absolutely safe. After black captures the pawn, it's king f4. The king can never be mated here. And look, this pawn is still a big problem. So the rook is coming back to the e file, so that after a7, it's rook e8. You're covering the square. Now it's rook a5, renewing the threat of promoting the pawn, rook a8, and here it's bishop d4, guys. This is a great move because the bishop supports the pawn, which means you can place the bishop on c5 so that the bishop remains out of play. For instance, if you play a move like f6, I'm gonna play bishop c5, and now white's plan is very simple, as you want to get your rook over to b8 to force the black rook to make a decision, and eventually the pawn will be promoted. Here you see why bishop c5 is such a great move, because the bishop on d5 is no longer able to help black covering the a8 square. Now we understand the move played in the game. There followed this move c5, opening the diagonal, so the bishop is helping in defense, but it does run into rook takes c5, attacking the bishop. Even you're attacking that pawn on c7. Black played here the move c6. So at some point the pawn on a7 may be captured, of course, but well, the bishop indirectly defends it as well. Anyway, can you spot the final tactical sequence of this game? I'll give you 5 seconds, and then in the meantime you are going to subscribe to the channel. Appreciate that support. I want to help the channel getting more subscribers. Let's grow it together, and then I will tell you what happened in this game. It's rook takes d5. Very nice idea. So you eliminating black's one of black's remaining pieces. After Recapturing the bishop protects the pawn. It's a great pawn, and it becomes even stronger because by removing that pawn from the c file, the b pawn can be launched, and very soon the b pawn comes to b5, b6, and b7. Connected passed pawns, they are much stronger. When the pawn arrives on b7, black cannot avoid the promotion of the pawn. Know that black's king is too far away, cannot even come over to the center because the bishop fantastically placed in the center, covering both diagonals, supporting the pawn, preventing the king from getting closer. Here, Ding Liren resigned. An amazing game played by Wang Hao, and you see that King Ding is not in his best shape yet, but it serves as a warming up tournament. And well, let's see how he is going to play in the battle for the third place in this tournament. Wang Hao moves on to the final, and well, we will soon see more of these Chinese players.